This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, let's start off with this story. We're going to have actually someone on after, I think, 5:30 this afternoon. So, basically, the story from Ganawagi, Quebec First Nations. Bill 96 will never apply in our community. This is pushback. We haven't seen this before.
Well, I mean, we have seen it growing late last month. Several First Nations groups, including the Grand Chief of Ganawagi, who's also head of the Band Council, held a press conference essentially saying what they're saying today. I don't know. I didn't monitor today's press conference. I know in the last one the expression cultural genocide was used. And, you know, you might say that, well, you know, that might be a little over the top. But the fact of the matter is all of this is unfolding in an election campaign with a government that up until recently was thumping its chest over how Quebec was essentially off the hook when it came to residential schools. But the fact is, and I got to tell you, the idea that this is going to be imposed, the optics of imposing this kind of, and I usually shy away from using the word, but this is genuine colonial legislation aimed at the natives and making sure the natives assimilate. But the problem is, when you look at it a little deeper, and you know we keep using that imagery, you discover that, well, it's kind of appropriate because Bill 96 is essentially this rickety legislative stockade that was built by the CAC. And all the supporters are inside with their muskets staring out, making sure that they're not overwhelmed by the natives or all the English around them. For a second, you think it was 1620, not 2020. You know, so I got to tell you, I'd be very surprised if Legault doesn't cave on this, A, because they are image conscious in terms of issues like this. They don't really care if the Anglos hop up and down. They're anglophones. They're radicals. They're yesterday's people. But this is a government that was, you know, trumpeting how it was going to reconcile with First Nations. Yann Lafrenière, who has proven himself to be a very capable cabinet minister, probably finds himself in a very difficult position right now, because this is not a matter of you know, providing services or, you know, arguing whether there is indeed systemic racism towards First Nations people in Quebec. This is a fundamental, literally existential question. And if the answer is too bad, so sad, language, you know, la langue commune du Québec, c'est le français, if it's going to be the same cassette they're going to play for First Nations, who, quite frankly, are a lot better these days at garnering media attention, and not just in Quebec, well, I think they're going to find themselves in for a very interesting dispute. And I use that word advisedly as well, because, you know, this has been a very sensitive issue for a myriad of other reasons, and the residential school horror being one of them. But now here we are in the 21st century with the government saying, well, you have to assimilate. And that's all this is. This is not a matter of protecting French. This is assimilating a very distinct series of cultures that predates anybody else by a century, if not millennia. And it's going to be, like I say, it's going to be very, very difficult. You're not going to get Simon Jeanette Barrette tap dancing his way out of this. I'm not sure they'll use Yann Lafrenière as their point man on this, but man, oh man, all of a sudden the stakes got a lot higher with Bill 96 and passing it as is by the end of this session.
No response so far, Jim.
Well, of course not. They're going to have to sit down, do some internal polling, and bounce around. How do we adjust our parachutes for this one before we try and bail? Because remember, it's a difficult situation, because if they do acquiesce to the completely justified demands of First Nations, what about the rest of the people who are affected by this, including Quebec Francophones?
Sure, that opens the door, right? I mean, that's why, there's that internal polling again. They want to make sure they do this thing.
No, they're going to have to throw some extra logs up in front of the gate stockade, guys.
Okay, listen, I don't know if you happen to hear, there's a new candidate obviously running for the Liberals in Mount Royal. She's taking over from Pierre Arcan. Yeah. We had her on just after 3 o'clock.
And it was strange. We had a very strange interview with her.
How so strange?
I don't want to say strange necessarily, but I would have thought she might have been. And again, I don't want to make this or have it come out the wrong way. She said some things yesterday. Just wanted to have her say today. How she reacted to having the premier basically call her out on Twitter. Jim, you know this, right? Saying, the Liberals have introduced their new candidate in Mount Royal, the anti-nationalist. That's all he said, which I found pretty disgusting to begin with. But then again, what do you think?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm ashamed to say I didn't hear I was up this afternoon. I didn't hear the interview, but I can tell you the reason I mentioned Legault's tweet, and he's done some pretty stupid tweeting, not just pound for pound with any Quebec premier, but I think with any Quebecer. But that one was interesting because usually when you go below, it's the usual suspects because he has his Facebook fan club, and they go out and go, "Bravo, Monsieur le Premier Ministre, I'm going to vote for you. I wish there were more people like you." 440 comments, and I got through about 350, and about 90% weren't just negative. They were very negative.
Wow.
In other words, how dare you be the arbiter of what's a nationalist? How dare you believe that your truth is the one that and tout ça en français. It wasn't, Bill Ferguson from, I'm Bill Ferguson from Dollar. It's just des bons Québécois de partout. Now we have to be careful, as I've said on the show. A Twitter storm can be 10 people with 100 aliases. Mm-hmm. But I found this is the first time I've seen this reaction. And I think to a certain extent, Francois Legault, between the pandemic, now that Quebecers, I like to think, are spending less time being, hypnotized or boxed in or confined by the pandemic, they're actually seeing at how this government works, and perhaps more importantly, how it doesn't work. And I have a sneaking suspicion between the topic we were just discussing and sorties like this, completely useless, thoughtless, and potentially politically dangerous outbursts from Legault, thinking that, I'm the premier, snapping his suspenders, thinking I can say whatever I want. There may be a crash course in humility coming over the course of this campaign for Francois Legault. And what I find interesting as well is that, same thing with Bill 96 and today's latest chapter, the opposition, because I know you always ask, Natasha, what's the opposition doing? The opposition is working with these First Nations as well. Mm-hmm. And there was another element today, I know we're running out of time, but a very smart move, I thought, by Dominique Anglade, and I'll give her credit. And Sinon, if she surrounded herself with some new planners, it's beginning to show, raising the issue of having 70,000 immigrants a year, up from the 50,000 that Legault has made, in order to meet the labor shortages, which is extremely severe in the regions. And this is the icing on the cake, a Liberal government will let the regions determine how many immigrants they need and what they need to have filled, rather than having a bunch of eggheads in Quebec City in the bunker deciding what's good for people out in Abitibi-Témiscamingue and in the Gaspé at the same time.
Finally, a policy.
You think so, eh?
That's kind of nice to see. And actually, that's, an interesting idea because, this whole immigration issue kind of took a left turn, I guess, today, Jim, as well, right? With the Parti Québécois now suggesting they shut Roxham Road. I mean, here we go all over again. So
that's, I don't know if you like campfires, but when you're watching a campfire extinguish itself, there's always this bright rising flame from the last little cinder, and then it goes out. But yeah, great move, guys. Go after Roxham Road and the feds. That's going to get you lots of votes in this election campaign. I tell you, maybe those bad advisors for the Liberals got hired by the PQ. I have no idea, but anyway, I was not impressed by that sortie today.
But can I just ask, with respect to Pierre Arcan, who's been doing this for 15 years, he's 70 now. He wants to kind of call it a day. So that's 11 now. We're expecting at least, a couple more will eventually walk away. Carlos Leitao, Catherine Weil apparently about to leave. In middle of an election just a few months away, you put all these new candidates in place. Some of the ones that are familiar to people who voted for them in the past are gone. Does that in and of itself augur well for the Liberal Party or not?
It's going to be more weight on the shoulders of Dominique Anglade, because she's going to have to do with what Legault did with the CAQ, which is become its face, its voice, and its soul. With all due respect to the large caucus of the CAQ, I could throw a stick, hit 20, and not know them. So It's like, I know maybe 10, like most Quebecers, I know maybe 10, 12 names of the entire government in Quebec, even though they're holding like 76 seats.
So there you go. That's, as you said, that's a great analogy, too, on her shoulders. Once that's the case, we just don't know who those names, who those people are.
But it might be a good plan. If we keep saying sentences that end or begin with "oh, I'm glad," she's doing something right.
Good
Well,
point.
I don't know, though, because, this whole effort to reconnect, I feel like that floundered and didn't really go anywhere.
Well, but it just
we'll
started.
see.
She's still going out to regions. That's where they really
right.
have to reconnect, I think, right,
And
Jim?
the
You need to win
immigration-
some of those seats.
It is a good policy.
All right.
You know what? It was snowing 2 weeks ago. We got a heat wave this week. Things changed.
Things are looking up.
James MENNIE at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adamant.